the myth, the legend, the 280 Remington. I've had a lot of requests and recommendations in the past to talk about this cartridge, and had a few recently, and even a few suggestions to do a project with this cartridge. So get a rifle, set it up, chambered in 280, and do the load development and all of that. And I thought, hey, that's a great idea. That sounds like fun. I've never had a rifle chambered in 280. Now, I'm very familiar with the cartridge. My father, he has one centerfire rifle, a Remington Model 700 BDL, and it is chambered in 280 Remington. And then my friend Joey, that many of you've met, this is one of his absolute favorite cartridges. Okay, so I am familiar with it, just for whatever reason, I've never owned one. Okay, so I started thinking hard about the 280. And keep in mind, with rifles I do a project on, I'm buying them for myself, and it's something I've always wanted, a specific rifle chambered in a specific cartridge for whatever reason or use. And usually it's something I'm hoping to learn something from it. Well, it can be months or even years before I find a specific rifle in that specific chambering that I can afford. So I just wanted to think about the 280 just to decide what would be the perfect rifle for it and perfect use, just so I would know what to be looking for. And then however long it took to find one. Okay, and matching a rifle and a cartridge and your intended use for it, well, that's extremely important for coming up with an outstanding hunting rifle. Here in the Southeast, we have a lot of short pines, shots usually under 50 yards, deer hunting. I would not want a 300 Weatherby Magnum for that 26-inch barrel. At the same time, I would not want a lever action 30-30 for extreme long-range hunting of anything. Flip the situations around though, and those rifles and cartridges are absolutely perfect. 30-30 lever action and short pines with shots under 50 yards, 300 Weatherby Magnum, 26-inch barrel for extreme long-range hunting of anything. So situation, cartridge, rifle, all that's very important. All right, so what would be the perfect rifle and use for the 280? That's basically what I was thinking about. Well, I started with checking up on the history of it. I knew a little bit of it, but I wanted to do a little research on the history, and that's important. Understanding the history of the cartridge, besides just being interesting, can help us apply what we've learned to a cartridge to get the most out of it. Okay, and the 280. Well, the history for it's pretty straightforward. Remington standardized an already existing cartridge, completely messed it up like they've done so many times, and out of all of that mess and confusion emerged an outstanding hunting cartridge. Nothing new there. In the case of the 280, Remington standardized a 7mm Alt-6 Wildcat cartridge that had been out probably since not very long after the 30-06 came out in 06. And where they messed up, when they standardized it, they loaded it to lower pressures than it was capable of. And the reason for that was they wanted it to function reliably in their new semi-automatic, or fairly new, the Remington Model 740, which would later become the 742. Okay, well, the problem was it wasn't as fast and flat shooting as the 270, and it wasn't as hard hitting as the 30-06, and so nobody was interested. And it just languished on the shelves for years. And there were a few people interested. Okay, serious hunters, reloaders that could see the potential of the cartridge. And as a matter of fact, Jack O'Connor, his very last rifle was a Ruger Model 77 chambered into 280 Remington. Okay, he saw the potential there. Now, unfortunately, he never received the rifle. He sent it to his friend and gunsmith, favorite gunsmith, Al Beeson, to go over the rifle and make a custom stock for it and set it up. And unfortunately, Jack O'Connor passed away in 1978 before he received the finished rifle. All right, but It's a cartridge he was very interested in. That wasn't a rifle he was just trying if he was having Al set it up for him and make a custom stock. Okay. I think Jack might have also knew something the rest of us didn't, because that very same year, 1978, Remington finally increased the pressure on the 280. And to bring attention to it, they renamed the cartridge, just like they did with the 244 and 6mm when they finally changed the twist rate. But okay, so they renamed it to the sub-millimeter Alt-6, and then almost immediately changed the name of it to the sub-millimeter Express, and then that just created all kinds of confusion with the sub-millimeter Magnum. So then in 1981, they just went back to the 280 Remington. But they finally had a really good cartridge. They loaded to full pressure. All right, so it's finally as fast and almost as fast as 270 with 130 grain, but it using a 140. But because the 140 had a better ballistic coefficient, the trajectories were right there with each other, fast and flat shooting. And being a 7mm, a lot more bullet choices than a 27 caliber. So it was almost as versatile as the 30-06, and it could go up in bullet weight and have a punch to it. Okay, so it was finally had reached its potential, and it was that sweet spot in between the two. All right, well, over the next couple of decades, the 280 got pretty popular. It developed a cult following, and there were a lot more rifles chambered in it. You're hearing a lot more about it. And by the 1990s, it was finally, after however many decades, a popular cartridge. Okay, so I took all of that and started thinking about it. And okay, its strengths. It's just a really good versatile cartridge. Very similar to the 30-06, and it's got reach on it for longer ranges, similar to the 270. Okay, and for whatever reason, my initial gut reaction thought was, this is a young man's cartridge right here. All right, this is something, a young man that was familiar, comfortable with recoil. He could go out, and used to shooting, he could go out and buy himself his first rifle in 280 and be able to hunt from now on with that rifle and cartridge. He could hunt anything in North America as long as it didn't have really big claws and teeth, brown bears, and it would be a great cartridge. And then if later on, if he decided to try another rifle and cartridge like us hunters often do, he could set that 280 in the corner and it would always be there, ready for use when needed. It would always be useful. Okay, so I got to thinking on that, in which anybody just wanting one cartridge, one rifle, it would be a good cartridge. All right, so I got to thinking about rifle. What would be a good rifle for that? Well, myself personally, for a short action cartridge, I like a 22-inch barrel. And for a long action, I like a 24-inch barrel. If I get a long action cartridge, 30-06 or 270, it's because I want the extra velocity for shooting longer distances. And I want a 24-inch barrel, first to minimize recoil a little bit, and the extra weight. And it's also the extra weight's going to help me shoot it a little more accurately, which is going to help at longer distances. And the 24-inch barrel is going to let me get all of the velocity out of that cartridge, which is the reason I'm getting it to start with. But I've always thought of a 22-inch barrel as more versatile. It swings better and thick brush and things like that. It's lighter, easier to carry. And a young man, all of us when we were younger, we tend to be more adventurous. Okay, so that lighter rifle, easier to carry, could really come in handy for going on those really long treks, those hard to get to places, rough terrain. Okay, so I'm thinking 22-inch barrel, something probably stainless steel, if it could be found at a good price. And whatever for a young man buying a rifle, it would need to be modestly priced. Okay, and stainless steel, because let's face it, when we're young, we tend not to take as good a care of our firearms as we probably should. 22 inches, and it's a lot easier to maintain on, for a long hunt or long trips or something like that. So, and then I got to thinking, well, Remington 700. I'm not sure what's going on with Remington anymore, but I hear they're producing rifles again. And Remington rifles, Model 700, it was always a good value. You got a good rifle for what you paid for it. And you could do anything to the rifle you wanted to later on, aftermarket accessories, stocks, and so on. Okay, so I thought, well, let's go see what Remington's doing these days. Went to Remington's website and started looking, and I couldn't find a single rifle chambered in .280 Remington on Remington's website. And I thought, well, that's not good. I know Remington Ammunition and Rifles are no longer the same corporation, different corporations now, but they both still say Remington, and if Remington doesn't have a rifle in .280 Remington, that's not a good sign. All right, so I started checking everywhere. And I could not find a single rifle, manufactured, new production rifle right now, chambered in .280 Remington. Now, the .280 AI is all of a sudden pretty popular. Nosler standardized the .280 AI, so it's a production cartridge now. And I'm seeing a few rifles in it, but that's not a .280, different cartridge. Okay, well, my thoughts on this being a young man's cartridge, that just completely went out the window with that. I mean, if a young man can't find a rifle in it, and which that tells me it's a dying cartridge. Right? That's not good. Now, I'm sure ammo will be available for many, many more years, but still, it's not a good sign. Okay, and then that really made me start thinking then, for me, it's just sad to see such a great cartridge just dying, which the .280 just has refused to die, so I'm not even sure it's dead yet. We'll call it the Frankenstein cartridge or the zombie cartridge. It just keeps on walking. So who is this cartridge for then? We know it's versatile. We know it's a great cartridge. We know it can do anything, but who is this for? And it's not for a reloader. There's quite a few cartridges they're for a reloader. A reloader can take those cartridges and safely bump up the pressures and get a lot more performance out of them. 7mm Mauser, one of my favorites. 257 Roberts. Okay, but it's not the .280. That's the .280 AI. Reloaders are having a field day with the .280 AI right now, pushing it absolutely as hard as they can, just about catching the 7mm Remington Magnum with the lighter bullets. Okay, but again, that's not the .280. Which, side note, they're doing it by bumping up the pressure. I keep hearing that AI cartridges aren't higher pressure, and the .280 is not a higher pressure than the parent case, or the .280 AI is not a higher pressure than the parent cartridge, .280 Remington, but it just, for some magic reason, just has a lot more velocity. It's a lot of the cartridges that have been actually improved, there's very little increase in performance for doing that. One of the few is the .280. There is a significant 100 feet or a second so increase in velocity by being an AI. A big part of that's coming from the pressure increase, even though I keep reading it's not a higher pressure. All right. Nosler, when they standardized the .280 AI, the SAMI spec's 65,000 PSI. SAMI spec on .280, 60,000. They increased the pressure. Now the powder helps, and anyway. More powder, slow burning powder. Okay, if you've got more powder capacity, because that powder is slowly burning as the bullet's traveling down the bore, You can increase velocity without increasing pressure just by having more powder. All right, and 7mm Remington Magnum, the max pressure on it's 61,000 psi. Okay, and it's significantly higher velocity than the 280. But part of the way it does that is with a 26-inch barrel. Okay, and then the other way you get higher velocity is you increase the pressure, and that's where most of the velocity gains for the 280 comes from, which 65,000 psi for this cartridge, that's getting on that borderline. It's safe, but it's getting really close to the edge. That's a hot cartridge at that point, which the 270 Winchester, that was the original spec for it, was 65,000 psi, and it was originally a hot cartridge. Almost all of the manufacturers have actually slowed it down a little bit, and I'd be willing to bet the majority of the loadings for the 270 are right around 60,000 psi, but that's just me guessing. Anyway, so 280 AI is a hand loader's cartridge, not necessarily 280. So who is this for now? And about the only thing I could come up with is this is a rifleman's cartridge. This is a hunter's cartridge that they see the potential, and they appreciate a 7mm bullet, what it can do. They don't want the extra recoil, pressure, or anything else of the AI or the sub-mag, and they want a 22-inch barrel, and they want a good performing cartridge that they can carry and hunt, and it handled just about anything. All right, so I guess that's what's left for the 280 now. So with all of that said, what is the perfect rifle for a 280 Remington? It's definitely not a young man's cartridge. It's a hunter's cartridge and a rifleman's cartridge. And there are so many great rifles that this would be perfect with. And so many configurations, 22-inch barrel for versatility, 24-inch barrel for the range. It just works in so many, and there's no one particular rifle that just comes to mind with this cartridge for me. No. 270, I automatically think of a Winchester Model 70 Sporter. 30-06, so many great rifles chambered in 30-06, but I automatically think of a 1903 Springfield. But nothing's really coming to mind for the 280. It just works great in so many, and there are so many just great hunting rifles. So I have no clue. But I did want to share this because for me that was kind of sad, realizing that there isn't a single production rifle out there, at least that I could find, chambered in a 280 anymore. But yeah, it's on its way out, but I got a feeling it's still going to be here for many, many more years. It is the zombie cartridge that refuses to die. God bless and have a great day.